Welcome back again, you filthy Exile. So, a few peeps have put up in the last video that I put up, they wanted more builds, and in the thingamabob, more builds. So, you know what? I dredged through some of the reaches of YouTube as far as build guides, picked out some creators who have put together some really, another 5 awesome League Starter guides. And yeah, I've got them here ready for you to have a look at and consider. Now, we're about 1 day, 6 hours away from the new league drop, so obviously patch notes are out. Now obviously looking at the patch notes at a prelim, we've had nerfs to a few different classes, which was not unexpected. You know, there's some Blade Vortex nerfs, there's some nerfs to Blade Blast, but you know, and to carrying golems, all of these were expected nerfs, and quite frankly, they're not really nerfs that matter too much, because I dare say most people will play those builds at the very start of League again. But anyway, let's get into another 5 League starters that you can use. I've tried to actually look for builds that are a little bit different in this circumstance, so here we go, let's get into it. Alright, so the first build on this additional list is actually the Storm Brand Assassin, and this one in particular can be re-rigged into Penance Brand, which is a really cool skill. Basically, you drop your brand, you run around, the brand attaches to enemies, and as you can see, it basically just spikes enemies all around. Now, this build in particular has a couple of trees. As you can see, this is the budget T16A8 gameplay, and when BeaniesbroPOE actually mentions budget, he's actually running Agnerod Imperial Staff, and now this does have an Impulses chest on it, but I guess from looking at his build guide and the League Starter notes that he's got here, it's actually not a very hard build to gear up. Stormbrand is actually quite a powerful skill when you max out crit, and when you start using the brand cluster duels, this creates a lot more damage impact. In particular, I ran a Armageddon brand Inquisitor last league, and what I found is it was just an absolute bloody damage tank from, you know, just crazy amounts of damage. The other advantage too is you can drop your brands on a boss, walk away, and dodge the damage while the brands do damage for you, which is another huge advantage of this. Now with Penance Brand, which isn't shown in this video here, it actually travels to enemies, it explodes, and then it travels to the next enemies essentially, or the brand essentially explodes, doing, you know, AoE damage to enemies. As an overall fantastic build from a starting point. This will scale up incredibly well. The tree also has multiple stages leveling from 1 to 60. It has the Agnerod variant of the tree, which is a budget endgame sort of spec, which gets you to about 2.9 million damage without any crazy drop-offs. Sorry, 2.4 million damage once you take into account Shaper and Guardian damage. Now, I am going to put up an abridged version of this POB in my video, but check out the video that BeaniesbroPOE has actually put out, because he's actually a new creator, and you know, he deserves a bit of love. He's putting out some decent guides. This is a pretty cool build. As you can see, it's pretty achievable. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward, and it'll be a really easy league starter for anyone just looking for a chill build to drop brands and run around and destroy enemies on. But anyway, this would be number 1 of you know, the next 5 builds I would recommend. Okay, so the second build that we're going to look at is actually going to be a Bladestorm Cyclone champion. You can take it as either Cyclone or Bladestorm. In this case, I would actually go Bladestorm, and the reason for that is, and by the way, this build is been put together by Asuzara, who again is a relatively new content creator. So I'll leave a link to a video, and you can pick up a POB from there. And she's got some not bad commentary on this too to explain it. Now, if you have a look at the recent patch notes, Bladestorm has actually received a I guess a buff, or a change, which is Bladestorm now deals 70 to 108% more damage with bleeding while in bloodstance. So does quite a bit of damage. Now, the advantage of running Bladestorm, and I experimented with this last build or last league, was basically you can just sort of smack Bladestorm as you run around, and you can build up an incredibly tanky build, and the Bladestorm will drop literally a Bladestorm down behind it when you drop it, which means, as I think you can see it on the screen there, it just continually does damage to enemies, which is, you know, pretty damn cool. And with the changes in this league, this essentially means that, you know, you've got a bit of a, you know, a hefty boss killer as well, so it's going to do that additional damage you need it to do to really get it over the line. And I believe there's a lot of other, you know, build variations coming out on the market for this. This one's a really basic build as well. The advantage of this one, and what you'll see in the tree, is the gear itself is relatively straightforward. It does use an explodey chest, but at League Start, you're not going to be using an explodey chest. And you don't really need it at League Start anyway as you're progressing, but that's probably the most expensive item on this. The other side of it is this build does have the use of 2 Paradoxicas in the tree, but if you have a look in the weapon gear loadouts, you can actually switch that down to an Ichimonji, which is a really baseline sword that you can run, you know, at low levels, and then you can eventually, once you generate the currency, get a couple of Paradoxicas. They're going to proc double damage, and then this will easily sit on 1.4, 1.6 million DPS with just no flasking on that as well. With just basically doing Blade Blast as you run around maps. Now, there's a lot of areas where you can variate this build. Some of this tree is a little bit, you know, endgame-ish, but essentially the concept's there. It's very basic. There's actually no cluster jewels in this tree either, so you could actually, you know, roll up with Towering Threat or something like that to increase your AoE damage, and that's going to give you more clear speed and faster clear speed, and that's going to also give you more health and sustainability. And you can also play around with a bunch of other different variations to the build. But as an overall, I think this is a good League Starter build, especially for someone just getting into the game. It's relatively straightforward and easy to follow, and a video is not bad too. So check it out and give her a like and a sub if you like what she's put up. Alright, so the next build is sort of interesting. It's a sort of intermediate build, and it feeds into the idea of respecking once you get to a certain point. But it's actually Kaye's Minion Army Necromancer. Now, Kaye, if you haven't followed any of her builds over the years, is actually just a complete guru when it comes to minion builds and Spectre builds in particular. But she's got just guide after guide after guide of crazy ass minion builds. Now, this one is sort of geared at SSF. It doesn't require any uniques. It will require a little bit of crafting, but you know, that's part of the game. But the advantage of this build is it'll sort of take you all the way through to endgame, and all it really is predicated around is having as many bloody minions as you possibly can on the screen at any one time. You basically just cast them all. You have zombies running around, skeletons, phantasms, you know, SRS, everything, just doing crazy amounts of damage. And the idea is you just absolutely swamp your enemies with your army, and it destroys everything. Now, is this going to get you to Cyrus? Possibly not, most likely not, but what it will let you do is get through the end game and mapping quite efficiently, and then you can respec into something a lot stronger, such as Carrion Golems, Soul Rest. You could respec into Zombiemancer, Golemancer, you know, anything like that, or, you know, I think I said Golemancer, but, you know, Spectres, for example. You could do any of that with this, essentially. The only thing that I can't really see on a build is an Animate Guardian setup, and that would probably be the only thing that I would do on this to beef this up a bit more. If you could set up a really cheap early level Animate Guardian, then that would buff up all your minions and everything else in between. As an overall, her guides are always very, very thorough. They're very easy to follow. She does have a full sequence of all the skill tree setup. So as you go through from essentially level 13, and then, you know, increments of when you first ascend in Act 5, she basically maps out all 10 acts and how you should allocate to get the best possible result. But as an overall, her builds are always fantastic. Check out her channel. I'll put a link in the description to her video. You can pick up the POB from there, and also check out some of her other builds that this will respec into. If you're not quite sure what you want to play, but you know you want to play a Necromancer, then this is a good starting base build to get you into the league. The next build that we've got on this list, which will be number, I think, 4 at this stage, is actually the Armageddon brand Witch from themehmetbozlak. Dude, why'd you make Such a hard name to say. Fuck. Anyway, the best thing about this build is it does use Flame Wall and then Armageddon Brand, and abuses the Elementalist ability to summon multiple golems, which then buff up your damages. Now, the other advantage of this is it actually takes advantage of some of the damage mitigation nodes that the Elemencer has, in particular, you know, such as Bastion of Elements, which essentially gives you Primal Aegis, which means you can take a shitload of elemental damage before it hits your health pool. Now, that makes this build quite tanky. Now, I actually do have a variation of this with the Inquisitor that I played last league and put a guide up for, so I'll put a link to that video in the description and you can pick up the POB from there. But this is actually not a bad build. It does okay with the Armageddon Brand damage as well. Now, obviously, that's further buffed and the POB isn't fully, you know, spec'd out to deal with the damage, I guess the damage that you'll get from having the additional golems and whatnot. But the big advantage of this build is the gearing is completely easy to get your hands on. For example, it uses the Searing Touch, which, you know, you do get later down the track, but it's not a hard item to get, and I believe there's a really cheap variation of that you can start with, and then you can upgrade it with, I think, a Prophecy or something like that. But everything else is relatively straightforward to get your hands on or self-craft, and it really only takes advantage of the Ember Wake to essentially inflict additional ignites on enemies. The only jewel that's going to be really costly here is the Red Nightmare, and you'll get that later down the track. But my experience with Armageddon Brand is it's just an incredibly sustainable skill. The other thing is there's no cluster jewels in this build, which is good from an early leveling perspective, but you can actually get cluster jewels to buff up your brands, get additional brands, different things like that, and really spec into getting like 6 brands. You drop that on enemies and it just goes to town. As you can see, Cyrus fight in front of us right now. It does a pretty bloody good effort on putting out damage, and it'll take you all the way through to the end game. It'll be nice and tanky, sustainable, and do everything you want. Now, the other advantage of his build tree in his POB and his guide is that he's got a bit of a leveling guide here from 35 to 60 to 90 points, which is going to make it really easy to sort of level up and know which way to send your tree in the early hours of playing the new league. But definitely worth checking out. And if you want to play the Inquisitor variant, I have an Inquisitor variant that I ran last league that was just an absolute bloody beast. I think I got it to like level 95 or 94. But yeah, just creamed content like it was nothing. Bossing was relatively easy. It did sort of struggle getting into A9 Cyrus, but you could kill A9 Cyrus without too much hassle. But yeah, give that a check out if you want to play the Inquisitor variant. But Armageddon Brand's really good skill, underrated, but probably should be played more. And as you can see, the advantage is you just drop it on your enemies and it does all the work for you and you run around and kite. But yeah, let's get into the last build. Alright, so the last build that we've got here is, I always mess up his name because it confuses me, but Von Vikton's Dominating Blow Guardian. Now, how this build works is essentially if an enemy dies, and usually you'll do that when you first start a map, you'll get a Sentinel of, not a Sentinel of Purity, but you'll get a Sentinel of, what was it referred to as? Just Sentinel of Dominance. And I believe you can have up to 9 Sentinels of Dominance, and they scale up as you level up. And now, as you can see, they just turn into absolute, you know, meat bags of hate. Now, the advantage of using the Guardian class is that it actually has buffing for your allies. Now, the one thing that you could improve this build on is, oh no, he's got it to it, Animate Guardian. God damn. So essentially, you know, you get Radiant Crusader, which I think there was some changes to these nodes, and Unwavering Crusade, which basically buffs the living shit out of your minions, and then they do, you know, approximately based on this tree converted to the 3.14 patch, they do about 1.17 million, so times that by 9 is 9 million shape of DPS off the bat. Now they're further buffed up by the Animate Guardian buffs and whatnot as well. Now when it comes to actually killing bosses, you have a 25% chance on hit that a Guardian of, was it Defiance or Dominance? Sentinel of Dominance spawns, and then they'll do fuck off amounts of damage, so you don't really have to worry too much about bossing. As you can see, you just absolutely face tank bosses and destroy them. Now the advantages of this build is the gearing requirements are piss all. you're really just going to be stacking ghastly jewels, which have that percentage chance, percentage increase to DPS for a minion that has just been spawned. And in this league in particular, obviously we've got patch notes which change those jewels and actually make them more powerful. So what you'll probably find is this build is going to upscale in DPS with a very, very low initial setup cost. I actually sort of really want to play this build, and it might be the second build that I play. Because it's just really interesting. And as you can see here, is even just running a freaking ambush charge like a baller at start of league, which are really cheap and easy to get. Now it does, in the actual POB, he outlines using a Lionized Remorse, Darkness and Throne, and the reason why I use a Darkness and Throne on minion builds is because you can put 2 Abyssal Gems in there, and then you get the percentage multiplier from the belt on those jewels, and it amps up the damage that your minions do further. Now in relation to, I guess, the tankiness of this build, we're looking at about a 6.1k life pool. Energy life regen could be better, which, you know, can be refined in the build, but then you're looking at max chaos resist and all other resistances less lightning, which is at 65%, but that's just dependent on tweaks to gear. As an overall, this particular build is actually quite good. It's nice and cheap and easy at league start, very achievable. As you can see, it's just got a really basic cluster jewel setup in it, which is, yeah, pretty straight bloody forward, to be honest with you. So yeah, if you're just looking for a chill build that's tanky, you can play this. It's disappointing that they did change the Sentinels of Purity build that I worked on a few leagues ago, where you could get like 6 Sentinels or whatever, because that was really dope, because you could have synergized that with this, but unfortunately that's been changed. But yeah, this would be the 5th build that I'd mention in this this curation video. And yeah, check out his video, the link will be in the description, and you can get his POB from there. Alright, so we've only got one day and a few hours left for the until the start of the next league. I wish everyone good luck, and I hope these videos give you an idea of what to work towards, or, you know, I know at the start of a league it can be a daunting thing trying to figure out what build you commit time to. Everyone has limited time, and it's difficult to find a build with all the different builds that exist, and then, you know, the last thing you want to do is get stuck with a build that's not going to work. But, you know, from time to time that'll also happen, and we've all been down that road. Don't feel too bad. Just pick yourself back up, keep pushing through, level up another bloody character like I did last league. I did like 9 characters, deleted like 5 or 6 of them. But yeah, that's pretty much how you learn. But anyway, post your comments in the description, like and sub if this video works for you. Gives you some further ideas on some different builds you can play. I'll link everyone's videos that I've curated in the description. They deserve you know, a bit of credit there. They've done an excellent job in threading it together, and definitely, you know, give them a like, give them a sub, support them. Some of these smaller creators really come out with some fantastic fucking builds. You know, even I myself, you know, try and think up different things. But yeah, anyway, until next time, like and sub, and bye.